It happened on a Tuesday. It always seemed like the kind of day you'd get bad news on, halfway through the week, when you're tired but not yet close enough to the weekend to really care. Sarah stood in front of the couch, looking like she'd rehearsed this, like she already knew what she was going to say. The bags were packed, neatly arranged by the door. There was a weight in the air that made everything feel wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice steady but strained, like she was trying to convince herself. I didn't believe her at first. She was always dramatic when something didn't go her way, always acting like the world was falling apart when she couldn't get exactly what she wanted. But this felt different. Something in her eyes told me this was real. "For who?" I asked, half expecting her to crack a joke or say something ridiculous. "Someone more adventurous," she said, her gaze darting to the side. "Someone who wants more from life than what we have here." I raised an eyebrow. "So, I'm the boring one now." I forced a smile, trying to mask the confusion rising in me. "You've got a full face of makeup on, but you're leaving for someone who's spontaneous?" She stared at me, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't see love there. Just frustration. "I need to live my life to the fullest. I can't keep going like this. I'm not happy." She said it so simply, like it should make sense to me. I looked at her packed bags again, the neatness of it, and it hit me. She didn't want to fight for this. She'd already decided. I felt a little numb, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. And maybe that was for the best. We hadn't been happy for a while. She wanted excitement, and I didn't know how to be exciting. I didn't yell, didn't beg. Instead, I pulled my phone out, dialed my lawyer's number, and spoke in a voice that didn't match the emotion I was feeling. "I think we're done. Start the divorce paperwork." I said it as if I were ordering lunch. No rush, no drama. Her eyes widened, and she looked like she might say something, but all she did was grab her things and walk out. The door clicked shut behind her, and I didn't even feel relief, not right away. But as I stood there, staring at the empty space where she'd been, I realized something. I was already starting to feel lighter. I stood there for a few seconds, the silence in the room feeling too big, too empty. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, those sounds had always been background noise, but now they were louder, somehow. I don't know why I hadn't expected this. I should have. I mean, Sarah had been talking about needing more for months. Always hinting at some future we were supposed to be heading toward, some life we hadn't quite lived yet. But the truth was, she wasn't looking for something new. She was looking for someone new. And that was the part one couldn't shake. How easily she'd thrown everything away for the thrill of it. But I wasn't going to sit here and stew in that. I had things to do. The lease needed to be broken, the bills needed to be sorted out, and I needed a plan. First things first, I grabbed my phone and pulled up the apartment leasing office's number. It took a minute before I was speaking with someone, and as soon as I mentioned breaking the lease, the woman on the other end gave me the "sorry, but that's how it is" spiel. The usual, penalties, paperwork, the whole thing. But then something clicked. Without Sarah's habits, the extra spending, the dinners out we never really could afford, and the impulse purchases she loved to make, I realized I could actually afford a better place on my own. A smaller, quieter place. A real place. The idea almost felt too easy, like the weight of her gone gave me the clarity I didn't know I needed. The idea started to form in my mind, like an itch I needed to scratch. I'd wanted to change for a while. Somewhere simpler, less cluttered. So I grabbed my laptop, started looking, and it didn't take long to find a small house just 2 blocks from my office. I clicked on the listing. It was perfect. It wasn't fancy, no granite countertops or walk-in closets. But it was clean, cozy, and had a little yard. I could see myself there. I could breathe there. And that, right now, was all that mattered. I called the landlord, and he picked up right away. We talked for maybe 5 minutes, a quick back and forth, and the deal was done. I signed the lease that afternoon, my mind already picturing where the couch would go, what color I'd paint the walls. It wasn't just a place to live anymore. It was my future, suddenly laid out in front of me, neat and easy. I even called the moving company that day, setting everything in motion. I felt good. Better than I thought I would, at least. Later, I sat down with my phone, dialing my lawyer. "I need to move forward with the divorce," I said, not wasting time. "I don't want to wait. Get it done." He was surprisingly quick about it. He confirmed the paperwork, asked if I had any last-minute questions, but I didn't. There was nothing left to say. We'd been heading toward this for a long time, and there was no point in dragging it out. As I hung up, I realized I was almost okay. It wasn't like everything was magically perfect now, but things were getting simpler, and that's what I needed. In the space Sarah had left, I found something I hadn't realized I'd lost: control. I could make decisions for myself again, without worrying about how they'd affect her or if she'd approve. A small part of me, a really small part, still wondered about what went wrong. I mean, we'd built something together, right? I used to think we were happy. But then, as I started packing up our stuff, I realized how much of that we had been based on her ideas and her whims. It was all her choices. The furniture that didn't fit, the nights out when we should have saved, the constant need for something new. It wasn't all on me, like I'd convinced myself for so long. Packing my stuff felt different than it had in the past. There was a weird comfort in it, in knowing I wasn't just packing up our life. I was packing up mine. No more pretending. No more pushing aside what I wanted just because it wasn't exciting enough. It wasn't just the apartment. It was everything. I was reclaiming my space. And when I left that apartment for the last time, I couldn't help but feel a small surge of relief. Like the weight of everything that had been building up finally let go, even if I wasn't entirely sure what the future would look like. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like it was mine to decide. The first night in the new house was a strange kind of quiet. I unpacked the basics: clothes, a few kitchen items, the couch, and sat down on the floor, staring at the empty walls. No clutter, no piles of things Sarah had bought on impulse or left behind after one of her creative projects. There was just space. Real space. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. And that alone made it feel like freedom. I spent the next couple of days making it more me. The living room stayed simple. Just a couch, a couple of chairs, and a coffee table. I was used to Sarah's constant need for decoration, for making everything cozy, but I didn't need that anymore. I liked the clean lines, the emptiness. It felt clear, easy. I didn't rush to fill the place up with stuff. Slowly, I picked up a few things that fit: an old lamp I'd kept in storage, some bookshelves. I didn't realize how much space I had until I started putting things in it. Things I'd forgotten I even liked. Books I hadn't read in years, a few paintings I'd bought at flea markets but never had the nerve to hang. It felt good, rearranging and deciding where things went, knowing no one would question my choices. There was no one to ask why I needed that particular chair or why I didn't buy a bigger TV. The first time I used the coffee maker, it felt like an absurd little victory. I didn't have to stop at the cafe for overpriced coffee every morning anymore. I could make it at home, just the way I liked it, and save myself $5 every day. I took a sip, feeling the warmth settle in my chest, and for a second, I was just content. It wasn't anything big, but it was mine. No more awkward mornings trying to coordinate schedules with Sarah or her picking out fancy lattes that didn't fit in with the budget. Now, I just got up when I felt like it, brewed my coffee, and went about my day. Quiet. Simple. A few weeks passed, and I started settling into a routine. I worked, I went home. I cooked for myself. I read more. I even dusted off an old guitar I'd left behind after I met Sarah. I hadn't realized how much I'd stopped doing things I used to love. Little things, like playing guitar or writing. Hobbies I'd sacrificed so she could have more, so we could have more, but mostly so she wouldn't feel bored. I thought about that sometimes. The things I gave up without realizing. I'd always known she needed excitement, but I didn't know until after she was gone how much I'd adapted to her unpredictability. How I'd lived my life by her moods, her needs, her desires. Every time she wanted something, I gave it, and when I didn't, she made sure I felt it. Every vacation we never took, every spontaneous trip I never agreed to, every night I stayed in because I was tired, those little things had built up over time. Now, I saw it clearly. I'd let myself get lost in her chaos, always trying to keep up, always trying to make her happy. But here, I didn't have to chase anyone else's version of happiness. I could just be. I started thinking about what it had been like, living with her. The way the apartment always felt like a pressure cooker, always something hanging in the air, some expectation I hadn't met. She was always talking about wanting more, needing more, and I'd been stuck trying to fill those spaces, trying to satisfy her hunger for something bigger. But all along, I'd been starving, too, in my own way. I never realized it until now. I could see that now, and it hit me harder than I expected, how much time I'd wasted not even asking myself what I wanted. She wanted chaos, unpredictability. But what I needed was this: peace, space, time to breathe. In a way, I was starting over. And I liked it. Hell, I needed it. Even though there were moments when I'd think about what might have been, about what we'd lost, the feeling never lasted long. It was replaced quickly by the satisfaction of making my own decisions, of not having to question every choice I made. I didn't need adventure. I didn't need drama. I just needed this: quiet, simple, my life on my own terms. A couple weeks in, I realized I hadn't looked at my bank account in days. It wasn't something I usually did. Sarah was the one who'd kept track of finances, planned the budgets, made sure we stayed afloat. But now, with just me in the picture, I had no reason not to check. I clicked over to my account. There was more in there than I thought. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to know that I wasn't just surviving, but actually living in a way that didn't feel like I was suffocating under someone else's needs. I didn't have to buy fancy things to prove I was successful. I didn't have to pretend I liked living in a place that wasn't really mine. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. And that thought, that simple fact, made me realize just how much I'd been willing to ignore to make someone else happy. I didn't miss Sarah. I didn't miss the chaos. I didn't miss any of it. It started with a text from Sarah's best friend, Megan. I didn't respond. It was one of those messages that made you pause, the kind that makes you think, why now? Hey, just checking in. I know things have been rough lately. Have you heard from Sarah? She's been trying to reach out to you. Is everything okay? I stared at it for a minute before putting the phone down. No, I hadn't heard from Sarah. And no, I didn't plan on answering. I figured if she wanted to reach me, she knew how. But it felt strange. She was the one who walked out, and now her friends were worried? I wasn't sure why they were acting like this. She'd made her choice. A couple of hours later, I got another message. This one from one of our old neighbors, Tom. Hey man, I've been meaning to ask, have you talked to Sarah? She's been asking about you. I think she's really struggling. I know you two had your issues, but you okay? I didn't reply to him either. I didn't know any of them an explanation. The thing that bothered me was the same thing that had been eating at me ever since the divorce. Why the hell did Sarah care now? The next day at work, it got worse. My coworker, Ellie, stopped by my desk, her voice dropping lower than usual. You've been doing okay? You're not, like, hiding out, are you? I heard Sarah's been trying to get a hold of you. She looked at me, like she was waiting for some kind of emotional breakdown, something she could report back with, like she wanted to see me crumble. I shook my head, trying to keep my voice even. I'm fine. I haven't heard from her. No big deal. But Ellie wasn't satisfied with that. She's, been kind of asking about you around, you know? She seems worried, or something. I blinked, letting the words hang in the air. Worried? About me? That's funny. She seemed pretty fine when she left. Ellie shifted uncomfortably, like she didn't know what to do with that. I didn't need her pity, or anyone else's. I wasn't going to play along with whatever narrative they were trying to spin about Sarah. And it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, more people approached me. Another neighbor, Jenny, asked if I was okay, then mentioned how Sarah had been calling around, apparently trying to find out what was going on with me. Our mutual friends started poking around, too. Some were more subtle, others more direct. It felt like a damn inquisition, like everyone had decided to show up in my life after she'd walked out of it. But the more I heard, the more I realized something. Sarah wasn't just curious about me. She was scanning for information, trying to find out where I was, what I was doing, if I'd moved on. It felt invasive, as if she'd left and now needed to know that I was still in her orbit somehow. Maybe she didn't realize what she was doing, or maybe she was just trying to justify her own decision. Either way, it left a bad taste in my mouth. I couldn't figure it out. It was like she was trying to control the narrative, but without the authority to do so anymore. She'd left, but she hadn't let go. I didn't know what was worse, her suddenly showing concern or the way people seemed so eager to report back to her, like they'd been waiting for me to fall apart. I didn't feel anger, not really. Just confusion. Why wasn't she out there living her adventurous life, like she'd said? Why was she so preoccupied with what I was doing now that we were separated? One afternoon, after another awkward conversation with a mutual friend who said something like, "It's just that Sarah really misses you, you know? She keeps asking about you." I had enough. I realized something, or maybe it was just a feeling that had been there for a while, and I hadn't been ready to face it. Sarah didn't care about me. Not in the way I thought she did. If she did, She wouldn't have walked away like that. She wouldn't have left for some unknown thrill, for a guy who was going to be a disaster for her. She wanted excitement, but I wasn't that. I'd been stable, reliable, boring in her eyes. But now that she was out there, in whatever mess she'd made, she couldn't leave me behind completely. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was her pride. I didn't know, and frankly, I didn't care. What I did know was that the sudden attention from her side of things was just a reminder of how little she'd really thought about me, about what she was leaving behind. Her curiosity, her need to check in, it felt shallow, like she was just trying to feel better about her choices, and that wasn't something I was going to help with. I didn't respond to a single one of those calls or messages. I wasn't going to get dragged into her drama, not after everything. I had enough of that life. Instead, I went back to my routine. Quiet mornings. A cup of coffee made just the way I liked it. My evenings spent reading or playing my guitar. It was all simple, and it was mine. It started off slow, just little bits of information trickling back to me. At first, I didn't care. But then it kept coming, like a slow leak that couldn't be plugged. It was Jack, one of the guys I used to hang out with. He and I hadn't talked in a while, but we bumped into each other at a bar one night. He was a little too drunk, and I could tell he was itching to say something. "Man," he said, dragging the word out like he was about to drop a bomb. "You hear about Sarah?" I raised an eyebrow. "What about her?" "Well, she's with some guy now, right? Some adventurous dude. You know the type," he snorted. "Turns out he's a loser. Unemployed, lazy as hell. She's covering all his bills, buying him whatever he wants. He's draining her, man." I don't know why it hit me the way it did. Maybe it was just the way Jack said it, like it was something that was meant to be funny. Or maybe it was the vindication of knowing that Sarah had left me for someone she thought would be better for her, and now that choice had backfired. I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Sounds like a great catch." Jack shrugged. "Yeah, well, you know how it is. Some people just can't handle what they've got until it's gone." The word stayed with me long after I left the bar. It wasn't just that Sarah had jumped into something with a guy who wasn't who she thought he was. It was that she'd left me for this chaos, for a guy who was worse than I ever was. Over the next few weeks, the rumors kept coming, more details getting dropped here and there, like breadcrumbs leading me to some truth I wasn't sure I wanted. I heard from another mutual friend that Sarah was struggling financially. The guy she left me for had drained her savings on stupid things, fast cars, expensive gadgets. And now, he wasn't even around half the time. She was alone in a way I hadn't thought about. There was something oddly satisfying about hearing these pieces of the story. The picture of her, running after the excitement she thought she needed, falling flat on her face. It wasn't as sweet as I expected it to be, but it was something. I'd spent so much time wondering what I did wrong, trying to be the guy she needed, and now here she was, facing the consequences of her own choices. She'd wanted adventure, chaos. Now she had it. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel vindictive. But I couldn't ignore the way it felt, knowing that I wasn't the problem anymore. I wasn't the boring, predictable one. She had been the one to sabotage everything, chasing after something that wasn't real, and now she was paying for it. But as the weeks went on, I found myself feeling less and less about it. I'd hear more stories about her falling apart, about the financial mess she'd gotten herself into, how she was losing friends because she pushed them all away when she left her life with me. Her support system, my support system, was gone. People had stopped calling. They were starting to see things more clearly. And the more I heard, the more I realized how far away I was from all of it. I didn't care anymore. I didn't feel any urge to step back into that world, to fix anything. It wasn't my mess to clean up, and if anything, I was relieved to be free of it. I thought about how different everything felt. I used to be pulled into her problems, her drama, her never-ending needs. But now my life was my own. I could spend my evenings exactly how I wanted, reading, playing my guitar, or just sitting quietly in my living room. No one was coming by to judge me. No one was demanding I take care of their mess. It was peace, and I hadn't realized how much I'd sacrificed for years just to keep her from being upset. She'd wanted excitement. Chaos. Well, now she had it, and I was learning that peace was better. The distance between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional too. The more I focused on my own life, the less I cared about what was happening with her. I didn't need closure. I didn't need to fix things or understand why she'd left. It was over, and I was moving on. Sarah had made her choice, and I realized, as I settled into this quiet routine, that I didn't have to feel bad about it anymore. Her life was her problem. Mine was mine. And that was how it was supposed to be. It was a Tuesday when I got the call. I just finished a late lunch and was stretching my legs when my phone buzzed. I recognized the number immediately. It was Steve, the neighbor who'd lived down the hall from Sarah and me for years. "Hey man, you got a minute?" he asked, his voice sounding a little more serious than usual. "Yeah, what's up?" "So, you remember Sarah, right?" he started, hesitating just enough to make me sit up straighter. "Yeah, I remember her," I said, keeping it short. I didn't want to open that door. "Well, she came by today," he said, and I could almost hear him shaking his head. "Looking for you." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I just sat there, waiting for him to go on. "She looked rough, man. Real rough," Steve continued, his tone softening. "Like she hadn't slept in days, hair all messed up. She was asking about you, saying she needed to talk, wanted your number, all that." I felt a quick twist in my stomach. She'd walked out of my life without a second thought, but now here she was, showing up at my old place, looking like she'd been through hell. "Did she say what she needed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my chest felt tight. "Not exactly. But she wasn't herself, you know? Definitely not the confident, I've got everything figured out person she was when she left." Steve paused. "Honestly, man, she looked desperate. Like she was at the end of her rope." I leaned back in my chair. I'd been trying not to think about Sarah much lately. There were days I didn't even remember her face, or the way she used to hold her coffee cup in the morning like she was too good for it. I hadn't realized how much distance I'd put between us until this moment. Now, hearing about her desperation, it was like the lid had been lifted on something I'd buried. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. I knew what Steve was implying, and I didn't want to hear it. "Yeah, well, I don't want to talk to her," I finally said, my voice rougher than I meant. "I don't owe her anything." Steve sighed, a little too knowingly. "Yeah, I get it. I just thought you should know. She's not in a good place, man. Financially, emotionally. It's bad. She's been trying to reach out to people, but no one's really helping her." I didn't want to feel sorry for her. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it, just for a second. I remembered how she'd used to laugh at everything, how she thought life was a big adventure. The woman who couldn't handle the quiet, the stability, the boredom of me. And now? She was living the chaos she thought she wanted, but it was swallowing her whole. I rubbed my temples, trying to clear my head. "She made her bed," I said, more to myself than to Steve. "She can lie in it." Steve didn't say anything for a while, and when he did, his voice was softer. "I hear you, man. Just, don't forget, you're not the only one who's been left behind." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He was right in some ways, but I wasn't about to let guilt back in. Not now. Not after everything. The call ended shortly after, and I sat there, holding my phone in my hand, letting the weight of what Steve had said hang in the air. But the truth was, the more I thought about it, the less I wanted to reach out. Sarah had walked away from me, so she could figure it out on her own now. She didn't want stability. She wanted excitement, and now she had it, in the form of a man who didn't care about her, and a life that was crumbling. I didn't feel guilty about not responding. I felt relief. Relief that I wasn't the one who had to pick up the pieces anymore. That I wasn't the one getting pulled back into her chaos. I'd done enough of that. It was time for her to face her consequences. She had always been the one pulling strings, demanding more from everyone around her. And now she was out there, alone, unraveling. I thought about how she left with such confidence, like she knew exactly what she was doing. Her excitement had blinded her to everything that really mattered. And now? Now, she was desperate. She had no idea how quickly her decisions had burned through everything she thought she wanted. I didn't reach out. I didn't call her back. I didn't even feel tempted. For the first time in months, I realized just how far removed I was from her life. How little I missed it. There was no sense of longing, no ache, just a quiet, sure knowing that I was better off. As the days passed, I felt the distance between us grow even wider. Physically, sure, but emotionally, it wasn't even close. She was out there, scrambling, trying to patch things together, while I was here, living my life on my own terms. And I liked it that way. I didn't need to help her. She made her choice, and now she had to deal with it. The only person responsible for her misery was her. She wasn't going to drag me back into her mess. So I carried on. Quiet mornings. Evenings spent in peace. My life, untouched by the wreckage of hers. and that felt like enough. The message came late at night, just after I'd finished reading a book and was about to turn in. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I reached over to check it. It was from Sarah. "Can we talk? Just one last time. Please. I need to explain." I sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen. The words weren't anything new. I'd heard variations of them over the past few months from people trying to pull me back into her drama. She misses you. She feels bad. But something about this message, so simple, so desperate, hit differently. I let out a long breath and set the phone back down. I didn't know what she wanted to explain. What could she say that would change anything? She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. I could almost hear her voice in my head, the way she'd begged for more excitement, for something new. She had left, so sure that whatever she was chasing was worth it. But now, I realized how little I cared. How much I'd detached from her over the last few months. I didn't reply to the message. I didn't need to. I'd already told her everything I needed to say when I didn't beg her to stay. When I called the lawyer and started the process. No more second chances. No more excuses. She was the one who had walked away from me, and now she was trying to find a way back in. I turned off my phone, rolled over, and tried to sleep. But the silence felt different. Peaceful. The next morning, I heard from a few people that Sarah had been asking about me. Not directly, but through subtle questions. Is he seeing anyone? How's he doing? The questions felt almost like a game, a way to keep herself in the loop, as if my life still had some kind of bearing on hers. It was almost laughable. The woman who had walked away, who had sought excitement and unpredictability, was now trying to figure out what I was doing. She couldn't have been more out of touch with reality. I didn't engage. I never responded to her, or anyone who brought her up. It was clear she was trying to gauge where I was in all of this, whether I was falling apart or moving on. But the truth was, I wasn't interested in helping her keep her narrative going. I wasn't her safety net anymore. I had my own life now, a life I was starting to enjoy in ways I never had before. My friends and coworkers began to notice how little I seemed to care. Some of them even complimented me for it, saying how they admired the way I'd moved on. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt a strange sense of pride in their words. I wasn't bitter, or at least not in the way people expected. I wasn't clinging to the past. I was simply living, free from all the noise that used to drown me. A week passed, and I heard less and less about Sarah. No more texts, no more indirect inquiries. The silence felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I didn't need closure from her. The space I had now was enough to heal. And that's when it hit me. The absence of Sarah hadn't just been about getting out of a relationship that wasn't working. It had been about rediscovering myself. All those things I had forgotten over the years, my hobbies, my quiet time, my peace, they weren't gone. They had just been buried under the chaos of trying to meet someone else's needs. I'd been afraid of being alone, afraid of not being enough. I'd built my life around making her happy at the cost of my own happiness. And in doing that, I'd lost track of who I was. Now, though, I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't desperate to fill the silence with anyone's voice but my own. Sarah had wanted unpredictability, chaos. What she didn't realize was that there was strength in stillness. I was living proof of that. I thought about her, about what she had asked for, what she had left behind, and I felt something I hadn't expected, gratitude. Not for her, not for what she'd done to me, but for what I'd found after she was gone. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was free, and that was more than enough. I wasn't expecting her. Honestly, I hadn't thought about Sarah much lately. It had been quiet, my life, my routine. No more calls, no more half-hearted texts, nothing. It was just me. So when I looked out the window one evening and saw her standing there, in front of my door, I froze. She was a shadow against the night, huddled in the cold. I don't even know how long she had been standing there. I couldn't tell if the wind had made her shiver or if it was something else. She was wearing a thick coat, but it was old, dirty, like it had seen better days. Her hair was wild, unkempt. Her face was pale, eyes sunken, like she hadn't slept in weeks. This wasn't the confident woman who'd walked out of my life months ago. This was someone broken, someone desperate. For a second, I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to just close the blinds, walk away, pretend I hadn't seen her. But I didn't. I opened the door. She looked up, startled for a moment, like she hadn't expected me to actually open it. Her eyes were red, puffy from crying. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, breathing heavily, like she was trying to catch her breath. I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling, the words spilling out before she could stop them. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I need you to know, I didn't mean for it to turn out this way. She wiped her eyes, sniffling. I was stupid. I was selfish, and now I have nothing. I don't have anyone else. I need you. Please, take me back. There was a rawness to her words, like she didn't even care about pride anymore. She was bare, vulnerable, completely different from the person I remembered. And for a moment, part of me wanted to take her in, to pull her inside, to fix everything. But then I remembered. I remembered all the nights I spent worrying about her, trying to make things work, trying to be what she wanted me to be, only for her to walk away like it was nothing. Like I was just something she could leave behind without a second thought. I don't think you get it, I said, my voice calm, steady. I wasn't going to let her pull me back into her chaos. You made your choice. You chose him, chose a life of excitement and unpredictability, and now you're paying the price. She shook her head, stepping closer, her voice shaky with desperation. Please, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I didn't realize how much I needed you. I didn't know. Stop. I cut her off, not raising my voice but firm. You don't get to walk away from me and then come back when everything falls apart. You wanted a different life, Sarah. You wanted adventure. Well, congratulations, you got it. I felt something shift inside me, a calm that I hadn't felt in months. But now you're on your own. You have to deal with it. Not me. I'm not going to fix this for you. Her face crumpled for a second, like I had slapped her, but she quickly regained her composure. She wiped her eyes again, trying to hold it together. I don't have anywhere else to go, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. I thought I was making the right choice, but I was wrong. I see that now. I'm sorry. I didn't feel a flicker of guilt. Not 1 ounce. I had spent so long trying to be there for her, trying to fix everything, to make her happy. But she'd always wanted more than I could give her. Now, she was on the other side of that decision, and I wasn't about to be her safety net. You left me, Sarah. You left us. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't see it coming, but this is your mess now. You don't get to drag me back into it. You chose this. I'm sorry you're in a bad place, but that's not my problem anymore. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, not wanting to feel sorry for her. Not now. She didn't say anything for a while, just stood there, the weight of her regret hanging in the air. I could see the realization hit her, that I wasn't going to take her in, that I wasn't going to fix her life for her, that I had moved on, that I was no longer that person who would bend over backward for her. I'm done, I said, my voice quieter now. You need to figure this out. I'm not the one who can fix it for you. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need to. I turned and closed the door softly, the click of it echoing in the quiet of the night. For a long time, I just stood there, listening to the sound of her footsteps fading into the distance. The finality of it hit me all at once, but it wasn't painful. It was freeing. I had closure, not because of anything she had said, but because I knew I had finally let go. She made her choice. And now, so had I. And I wasn't going back. The days after Sarah's last visit were quieter than I thought they'd be. I expected some sort of internal struggle, like I'd be haunted by the memory of what had happened. But there was nothing. It was as if the door I'd closed had locked behind me for good, and all that was left was peace. I spent more time doing things I'd forgotten I liked. Reading, cooking simple meals, getting outside for walks. My life, which used to feel weighed down by obligations and expectations, felt light again. I'd forgotten how good it could feel to live on your own terms. And then there was Maya. We'd been seeing each other casually for a few months now, and it felt different. It wasn't rushed or impulsive, like everything had been with Sarah. It was grounded. Simple. We laughed about the little things, talked about our hopes for the future, but there was no pressure. No drama. There was just a sense of respect that I hadn't realized I was missing. She didn't try to change me, and I didn't feel like I had to pretend to be someone I wasn't. I could just be me. Nothing more, nothing less. I looked at her one evening, her smile warm and easy, and realized that this was what I had always wanted. A relationship where I could just be. I thought about Sarah, about the way she had dismissed me, the way she'd called me boring. The irony of it now made me laugh. She had wanted excitement, chaos. And now, here I was, calm, centered, and genuinely happy. I was living a life of peace, of small, fulfilling moments, and it was better than anything I had with her. I didn't miss the drama. I didn't miss the unpredictability. If anything, I felt grateful for everything that had happened. Because without it, I wouldn't have learned how to put myself first. I wouldn't have figured out that this, what I had now, was the life I was always meant to live. And I knew something else, too. I would never let anyone who saw me as boring or predictable into my life again. I'd been dismissed for so long, expected to change who I was just to keep someone else happy. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had my peace, my balance, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me again. I stood at the window one night, looking out at the quiet street. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly content. I had everything I needed. I had me. And that was enough. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.